Yes, yes, and I'm doing. Why not? We just grew. You know, by stars. Yeah. No, so it was one, two. Oh, you can never have that. Yes. I'm back. It's not. I know you are looking. It's not high. It's not bad. No, look, we're going to hear. Yeah. She's
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, good afternoon.
Okay, we are going to start by in the next 10 minutes.
Perfect, yeah, I'm
All right.
ready.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, now I've had it. One of them had it. Okay. Yeah, just Yes. Oh, wait, and this you just say,
I've created, I've provided like people should read it. If you have those
beauty colors.
Yes, so very far.
Yeah, very.
Very to learn. Exactly what you wanted to do.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah. It's very simple.
that's fun.
All those are self that all this are that we
I this one should be a man. First, a man.
yes, exactly.
It feels very well.
But those the outcome of the is probably comments.
Yeah. I think it's a funny schools. From the flight, it's just not very good anywhere. It's just like our very good every yeah, like that makes sense. Yes, it's just I try to use I don't see everybody
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to have you here once again, especially for those that attended the first session. I think for those of us that attended the first session, we agree with me that the session was very fascinating and engaging, and we're able to iron out issues regarding sexual agency and women's sexual and reproductive health. So this is the second part of the panel. And like I said in the first session, this panel basically aims to discuss the various issues about sexual agency, not necessarily women's sexual agency, but sexual agency generally, and especially in relation to reproductive health and how both of them can be linked. So most of the papers in this panel aims to answer the question, what is the state of sexual agency among African women of reproductive age? How has their sexual agency affected or influenced their sexual health? And the role that men play in women's exercise of their sexual agency, as well as how laws, policies, religious and sociocultural values impacted claims of reproductive health. In this second session, we have 4 speakers yet again, and the speakers are, yeah, for you, doctor. No. You get this, I'll call you doctor. So we have Dr. Efetobo Stephanie Efebotu. We have Dr. Sophia Edmire, she's there. We also have Dr. Kingsley Ogunmi. I don't know if Kingsley is online. Okay, yeah, Kingsley is online. And finally, we have Dr. Abiodun Olofisha. Well, I'd like to add that Dr. Abiodun is also the head of my department at Edinburgh University. So nice to have you here. All right. So the first speaker is Stephanie. And I'll quickly run through her bio before she presents. So Efetobo Stephanie Efebotu is a final year doctoral researcher at the Department of History, University of Ibadan. She holds a Bachelor degree of Arts in History in 2014 from the University of Benin and a Master of Arts degree in History in 2017 from the University of Ibadan. Her area of specialization lies in development studies with a focus on religion and peace building. She's also interested in gender, sexuality, youth, and migration studies with several publications through her credits. Stephanie will be presenting on the paper titled Social Media and Women's Sexual Agency and Reproductive Health in Nigeria. Thank you, Stephanie. You may add that you have 15 minutes, and I'll try to remind you when you have 5 minutes left. You have a floor.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Like you said, I'm Stephanie Lefebotu from the Department of History, University of Ibadan. I'll be making my presentation on social media and women's sexual agency and reproductive health in Nigeria. So before I begin, I want to just give 2 case studies. The first one is that we live in a country where when a woman gives birth and people come visiting, at first what you will expect from a normal person will be, oh, congratulations, how is baby? But in this part of the world where we live, most times when people come visiting, you ask them, they will just come and say, how is baby born? Now CS on a normal delivery. And if you said it's normal delivery, they will be like, oh, thank God, oh, as if children giving birth through cesarean section, they are abnormal children. Then case study number 2, during the course of my field work, I interviewed a lady that spoke of how a lady in her church died and avoidable death. She was pregnant. During the course of her antenatal care, she went to the hospital for checkup, and the doctor told her that the direction of the child, it will make it impossible for her to have a direct delivery. So the doctor advised her to go for cesarean section because of the way the child is positioned in the womb. So she went home, she told her husband's family, and the mother-in-law was like, God forbid that bad thing. That in our family, there's nobody that have given birth through CS and all of that. That is like an abomination, is like a taboo and all of that. That you are just being lazy and saying it's the doctor that you can do it. So with all those kind of, she wanted to like please her mother-in-law, please the husband family. So she started making her research, and they told her of an EBA specialist woman, all these traditional birth wife attendant that have the capacity to help her in massaging the womb and adjusting the child so she can push. So on that day, she went, even without the consent of her husband. She went there, they tried adjust, and they push. So after pushing, the umbilical cord or what it got stuck in her. Then they try wanting to cut, but at the end of the day, the baby came out, but the baby died. She herself was bleeding. Then the sister and the people there, they took her, they rushed her to church, put her in the altar, and they started praying. She died, the baby died, all because they were trying to want to please the society in which a woman that gives birth through CS is not regarded as being a true woman. So, introduction. So we said that despite the fact that attention has been given to women's studies in recent times, issues around the women agency, especially with regards to their sexual and reproductive health, it still remains one aspect that has not really been given a sufficient scholarly attention. So this study, we tried to look at the influence of social media platforms on women's social agency and reproductive health in Nigeria. And this is important because we are currently in a digital age, a world wherein the digital space influence almost all we do. The digital space has become a platform where people express their identities and navigate all manners of life, including matters related to their sexuality. And for women, this social media platform has become like a unique space for them to navigate and exert their sexual autonomy, to share their experience, to access information and resources regarding their sexual and reproductive health, as well as to challenge prevailing societal norms regarding their sexual and reproductive health. So I did a little bit of conceptual clarification to try and look at what do we mean when we refer to social media within the context of this work, what we mean by sexual agency and reproductive health. So for social media, we just refer to online platform and tools that enables users to generate and distribute content and so on. We have examples like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, information, but a few. Then when we refer to women's sexual agency, we are basically talking about the ability of women to make autonomous decisions about their own body, their sexuality, their reproductive health. It encompasses the freedom for them to express their sexuality in a way that feels true to them. The freedom for them to enjoy their sexual pleasure and intimacy without guilt or without shame, as well as to access information and resources to support their health. Then with regards to reproductive health, we are basically looking around issues of menstrual health, pregnancy and childbirth, maternal health, fertility, infertility, contraception, to mention but a few. Then with regards to the methodology and research questions, so for the purpose of this work, we made use of both primary and secondary sources. We use in-depth interviews, virtual ethnography, published with journal articles, and a few online resources. So for this study, we have three basic research questions. The first is, how do Nigerian women utilize social media platforms to obtain information about their sexual health and reproductive rights? Then the second is, in what way does the social media influence the decision-making process concerning contraception, family planning, reproductive health care among Nigerian women? And the third is, what are the obstacles and processes inherent in social media's role in advancing women's empowerment and independence in matters of their sexual and reproductive health? So these are some of the research findings. So with regards to the first findings of how do Nigerian women utilize social media platforms to obtain information about their sexual health. So from the findings we got, we discovered that social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and even TikTok has become important sources of information for Nigerian women seeking knowledge about sexual health. And this platform, it provides a space for women to access information discreetly and conveniently. And this is important in a country like Nigeria, where open discussions on sexual and reproductive health can be stigmatized and not even treated in disdain. If you look at the picture there, you will see there's this page on Instagram, it's titled Wives and Mothers, where people post different things about their experience as a woman. If you read this post here, it's talking about a woman that is talking about how she's finding it difficult to reach orgasm during sex with her husband. that to her, she thinks she's doing well. But most times when she sees the disappointment in her husband's face, it's like, what can I do? So the husband is nice and all of that, but she feels she's not satisfying him sexually. But most times it's difficult for you to even walk out to your husband to ask, okay, how I go fit say do am well when you go like him. And at times it's also difficult for you to walk up to your mother and tell her that, Mama, how can I please my husband? Having this kind of open discussion about sex, about intimacy in this our country is kind of difficult. So women often turn to this kind of platform to seek advice, and because of the anonymity it provides, so sometimes these women just speak in the comment section after posting this thing, and they start reading advice from people. Some of them will tell them that, oh, have you tried using the Kayamata? Have you tried using this? Have you tried using that? So with all of this, they gather information they think would be helpful to them, and they go home and practice it. Then, okay, if you go to the next slide, we also see that women use social media platforms to follow and engage with healthcare professionals, with some of these NGOs and other women that share educational content and tips on reproductive health issues. And this, they also use the social media platform also to serve as like a peer support for them. They can share their experience, talk to women. Then I gave some examples of some of the platforms that women said they usually utilize. And if you see this post, it's a bedroom matters on Instagram. It usually drop like daily tips for women. How can you spice up your relationship? If you see this post, it's talking about what can you do when you're experiencing dryness of the vagina. So they give different examples. Wash this, do this, take some kind of sweetener, drink watermelon, and all of that. So women gather some of this information in using to spice up their home and like get information. Then with regards to research findings too, on in what way does social media influence the decision-making process concerning contraception, family planning, and reproductive health? If you will agree, in this our country, it's difficult for you to seek information, especially openly about contraceptive, because people see contraceptive like a sin and all of that. But you that you are a woman, that you are bearing the burden of having 10 children, having 20 children, at times you want to know what can you do, even if it's secretly. So if it's to prevent you from giving birth every year. So women turn to these platforms to seek such information. Then if you also look at how they also engage social media to seek information about IVF, about issues around this, which are conversations that is difficult to have in the open. Then with regards to research findings, we saw that even though social media has been helpful, it comes with its own set of challenges, some of which include issues around misinformation and fake news. Nowadays, people just post all kinds of things on social media. Drink this herb and this herb. It will boost your sexual drive, and at the end of the day, you drink it and you start experiencing all sorts of health hazards. Then we also have issues around the digital and educational divide, issues around stigma and all of that. But despite these challenges, as we know, social media has a lot of benefits for women. Then in conclusion, the study indicates that platforms like TikTok and Facebook have served as avenues through which Nigerian women share experience, advocate for their rights, and access resources aimed at enhancing their sexual and reproductive health. But the study also reveals that social media can also serve as a way to perpetuate stereotype against women, because we've seen issues where women express their sexuality online, but they still face online harassment, slut shaming, cyberbullying, and backlash in the online space. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Stephanie. Personally, I enjoyed your presentation. I must say that it's an ingenious one. Stephanie's presentation, of course, emphasizes the role that social media plays in our society today. Just like Dr. Sonia's presentation earlier on, we can see how the social media not only influences young adults and their sexual agency, it also influences the sexual agency of older and matured women as well. But that then brings us to the question, which I think you've been able to address in some issues about the downside of using social media. Because, like, okay, fine, women use these spaces to express themselves and ask for advice, but there are still some other women that are there to shame other women. And in addition to that, there's also a lot of misinformation on this online platform. All right. It's time for us to listen to the second presenter who is already online. Second presenter is Sophia Edmire. Sophia Edmire is a PhD candidate at the Department of Social Anthropology and a junior fellow at the Bayreuth International Graduate School of African Studies at the University of Bayreuth in Germany, in cooperation with the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies at the University of Lagos. She's working on reproduction, family planning, and the compatibility of childcare and career for women in Lagos. Sophia's presentation is titled Family Planning Among Middle-Class Women in Lagos. Sophia, you have the floor for 15 minutes.
Thank you. Let me try to. Can you see them now? Can you see slides?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I already saw some connections to the first panel and also now, so I'm happy to engage with you all. I just finished the main phase of fieldwork, so I would appreciate any feedback that might come up. I'm going to briefly introduce my fieldwork, the project and the research, and then share some of the first findings with you. So what you can see here is an article from last year in a big German newspaper. It's about fertility in Nigeria. The title means Mr. Ali and his children. And it describes the life of this man and his family in Borno State, and then describes problems coming.
Then just click CMD profile, and then if you take it to the part on that page. So
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. So what I find interesting about this article is that countries like Germany are concerned with the situation in Nigeria, but also that the author comes to the conclusion that the situation would change with education for especially girls, because like him, many other voices in public discourse, but also in academia, assume that female education and empowerment would lead to reduced fertility. The fertility rate in Nigeria is comparatively high with 5.3. And it's only slowly reducing, which leads to the projection that Nigeria will be the fourth largest country by 2050. Studies show that contraception is widely available and affordable. People know about it, but it's not very widely used. And also that there are many differences within Nigeria. So, of course, there are many projects that explore the relation between contraceptive use and gender, but they are mostly quantitative and often based on secondary data analysis. And likewise, census data and surveys on fertility are often very large scale and can't really provide a deeper understanding of what's going on, especially when you look at very large groups with internal differences like Nigeria's population. So for my research, I tried to look closer on a smaller group of women in Lagos. So far, I've done 10 months of fieldwork, mainly in Yaba and in Lekki Phase 1. Participants were around 140 women between the ages of 25 and 40. Not all of them were mothers yet. I know that the question of middle classes is quite complex and complicated, so I would like to leave it out completely for today because it just goes way beyond the scope of this panel. But what the participants had in common was that they had all at least one tertiary degree. Most of them were in formal employment. They worked outside of their homes and had a more or less stable income. Most common occupations were teachers, nurses, small business owners, and also some working in the music industry. I used primarily semi-structured interviews and participant observation. So as you probably know, Lagos has an incredible amount of clinics, so pretty much every method to prevent or to facilitate pregnancy is possible there. The most common ways of family planning were checking the monthly cycle, withdrawal, condoms, and abstaining. Also injections, implants, IUD, and also the morning after pill taken rather regularly instead of only in emergency. Some participants made use of the hormonal methods, but the rest was too worried about the side effects, especially about gaining weight and impacting their fertility on the long run, which also shows how important it is to have children for almost every woman in Nigeria. Those who did use family planning methods mostly did so after they were married and only after having the first child. So an early conclusion here would be that contraception was not so much used to simply prevent pregnancy altogether, but more to make sure that it happens at the right time. That also means having enough space between each child in order to be able to take care of them properly. Of course, it was also used to limit the number of children. Most of the participants wanted something more like 2, 3 to a maximum of 4 children, which is another conclusion that the women wanted considerably less children than the national average, also than their parents' generations and than other people in Lagos. The main reason for that was the economy and the costs of living and bringing up children. So they wanted to be able to bring up their children in a way that they saw as good. Especially they wanted to provide them with a good education, which is of course a big financial burden. Not only for their children, but also for themselves, education was an important strategy. So as we heard earlier with Malucci, having unplanned children can get in the way of education and career. So contraception was an option for many to make sure that doesn't happen. Both fertility treatments and also contraception can be seen as opportunities to decide how and when children fit into one's life. It allows women to actively shape their life courses. That was crucial for many to make sure that they can also achieve their goals in education and career, which is an important strategy to build futures for themselves and their children. All the women were very busy. They were working full-time outside of the house and often multiple jobs. So at the same time, they also wanted and had several children. And as their mothers, they were primarily responsible to take care of them. So some of them used family planning to make sure it happened at the right time and under the right circumstances. When they had children, they had different strategies and arrangements to take care of them. Where I'm from and in many other Western countries, people actually have to be encouraged to have children, more or any at all. So there are policies that make work and childcare more compatible. In contrast to that, of course, Nigeria has a much higher fertility rate, and it would be hard to justify such a policy because it's not really necessary to encourage women to have children. So the compatibility is not really a big issue in Nigeria's public discourse or in politics, but of course it does concern women in their lives. Some of the participants were in their early 30s and they were focused on their career, not thinking about having children anytime soon. Conclusion here is that having children at a later time and having less children are a big contrast to fertility numbers and also to the prevailing image of reproduction in Africa. For the working mothers in my research, the question of childcare was crucial and often caused them a lot of stress. After giving birth, most women had help from their mothers or mothers-in-law for the first months. But changes in society also meant that many of the new grandmothers were still working in formal employment or they lived somewhere too far away to come. So at the latest, after the grandmothers had left or after maternity leave, the women had to find other solutions for someone to take care of their children while they were at work. Some had nannies or relatives or other people coming from rural areas to stay with them. A great example is this nanny agency called Umugu, because it shows how an institution comes up with a new solution for childcare for the circumstances today and how they are also still referring to the Igbo word and practice of postpartum care. Of course, there's also many crèches, kindergartens, nurseries, which are also important for child's education. But on the other hand, many women were very worried about how their children were being treated there. And of course, it's a huge financial burden on families. This shows how bringing up children is very complex, how much it depends on what people can afford, how much help they get, and what they want to achieve for their own and their children's futures. The women worked very hard on keeping a stable life and building better futures for themselves and their children, which means that they had to make their private and work lives compatible. For example, exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months was a challenge for many, because on the one hand, it's advocated in every health facility, and on the other hand, it's not very easy to accomplish when you have to return to work after 3 months of maternity leave. You can see how there are many expectations and demands on mothers for which they had to find solutions. And through this, they were also shaping and changing gender roles and ideals. Of course, such changes always happen, but they are never without contestation. So feminism and its effects were mentioned a lot during my research. feminism challenged gender norms and are often framed as an opposition to traditions and related values, especially in an African or Nigerian context. Some of the interlocutors refer to themselves as feminists, others, and especially men, criticize the idea. So, of course, being educated, independent, or even a feminist doesn't mean that you will necessarily use contraception, but it can mean that you have different goals and aspirations in private lives and careers. So, as I said, contraception and fertility services can be an opportunity to make the two areas more compatible. What I would like to stress here is that it's whether you call it empowerment or feminism or anything else, it doesn't mean a complete rejection of so-called traditions or existing role ideals. Using contraception to time and space shows how family planning doesn't necessarily mean preventing pregnancy altogether or mean drastically changing family structures. It actually shows how new family structures and having less children at a later point in life and also different care arrangements don't have to completely change the role of mothers. The women had and used different strategies to make their private and work lives more compatible, which allowed them to follow their career and to build futures whilst also having and raising the children they wanted to have. This shows the agency and also a certain kind of autonomy of women, not only in their sexual and reproductive rights, but also going far beyond that. So being empowered doesn't necessarily mean that women will use contraception or have less or no children. But for some of the participants, family planning was an opportunity to help them fulfill all their aspirations. I would say it shows how gender roles and ideals may change, but how they are also flexible and how different expectations and demands can also be combined. So like this, for example, the role as mothers doesn't have to completely be rejected. It just has to be fitted to the current circumstances. To sum up, limiting, spacing, and timing the birth of children plays a crucial role in enabling women to accomplish their various goals, aspirations, and role ideals for making them more compatible. Education and career were seen as key strategies to build futures for themselves and for their children, especially in the current context of crisis and insecurities in Nigeria. So these are the topics that came up during my research, and I'm now working on a holistic picture of reproduction in Lagos, but also in general with the goal to bring together reproduction in the biological sense, as in having children, but also in the sense of social reproduction. So thank you for your attention and any feedback or advice you might have.
All right. Thank you very much, Sophia. Of course, I'm familiar with your work, but I still appreciate how you've been able to raise a lot of issues in your presentation. Okay, but what is most striking in your presentation is, I know we've had one or two conversations about it, is the absence of the voices of their male partners. Like, we all know that women, of course, do not get pregnant on their own. And I think most of the women you worked with are either married or living with their partner. So you don't have to answer my question now, but you can think about how the roles that men play in the women's decision about their use of family planning or their choices of family planning, and to what extent the decisions of their male partner shape the eventual outcome of their choices. All right, thank you very much. Now move on to the next speaker in the person of Kingsley Ogune. Yeah, Kingsley is still there. Kingsley, if you can hear us, could you please signify? Okay, all right, he's there. So Kingsley Ogune is pursuing his doctoral degree in the Department of Political Science at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, where he also completed his previous degrees. He has worked for about 8 years as a public relations specialist and health communicator at one of Nigeria's top tertiary hospitals, Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital in Ile-Ife, where he found inspiration and developed strong interest in the connection between politics and health. His research interests lie in political economy of maternal health, climate change, gender studies, and public health policy analysis. He has participated in numerous fellowships, including the capacity strengthening for abortion research in Nigeria, funded by the Guttmacher Institute, USA. Is a recipient of the John Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, Gender and Health Summer Institute Scholarship for a short course on communicating gender responsive science. He recently received a full scholarship to attend the 2024 Health System Research Symposium in Japan. Kingsley is a member of the International Political Science Association, International Association of Political Science Students and the Nigerian Political Science Association. Is a fellow of the Ife Institute of Advanced Studies and IFRA Nigeria. With the support of gender intersectionality research grants from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Kingsley is embarking on a study that delves into the gendered effects of climate change on the sexual and reproductive health of adolescents in contrasting Nigerian communities. He's here at the LSA 2024 conference to present the preliminary findings of his research with expectation of receiving critical reviews. The title of Kingsley's presentation is On Equal Tides, Navigating Climate Change and Adolescent Sexual and Reproductive Health in Constructing Nigerian Communities. Thank you very much. Kingsley, you have the floor for 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Uga, and other members of the panel. A special shout out to Stefan, who we've met on different platforms from IFRA, Ibadan, and the Energy and Society workshop around. So, and the other audience, thank you, and I hope you have an happy listening, and hopefully I could get critical reviews from everyone. So as stated, the title of my paper is On Equal Tides, Navigating Climate Change and Adolescent Sexual and Reproductive Health in Contrasting Nigerian Communities. So as a way of introduction, there's this disproportionate effect that climate change has on the global south, maybe because of pre-existing socio-economic and structural challenges that pre-exist in some of these communities, even though most of these communities are lower contributors to the burden of carbon emission, yet they are affected heavily by the effects of climate change. And Nigeria, being the most populous country in Africa, faces significant potential climate challenges, as seen in cases of extreme weather conditions, flood, sea rise level, and severe other issues severely impacting communities. So there has been an avalanche of studies that have tried to look at the effect of climate change on environment, on health, and so many other issues. But then there seems to be a gap, especially within the Nigerian context, on how climate change impacts could affect adolescents' sexual and reproductive health. And our choice of bringing in the variable of adolescent sexual and reproductive health is simply because adolescents are believed to be already vulnerable group of the Nigerian society. And if they are already vulnerable, and we now look at the further impact of climate change, how it could further exacerbate their vulnerability, I think it's important that we take the issues around adolescent health seriously. And that is why we're trying to bring in all of these variables to see how they interrelate. So there has been effort by the Nigerian government to come up with policies that tries to look at the effect of climate change on gender issues. However, there is a notable lack of integration of sexual and reproductive health consideration in the climate policy of the country. There is also a significant gap in knowledge regarding how climate change uniquely impacts adolescents' sexual and reproductive health in Nigeria, highlighting the need for targeted research to address these issues. To this end, this study therefore emphasizes the importance to fill the information gap and inform future policy. So within the lens of intersectionality theory and feminist theory, this study aims to explain how gender, socioeconomic status, and overlapping factors jointly influence the experiences of adolescents' sexual reproductive health in the face of climate change. So the specific objectives of this study are stated here. For our methodology, the study adopts an explanatory mixed method, which is more of like utilizing both quantitative data and qualitative data, mixing it, translating it, and coming out with somewhat a representation of what the situation really is. And then our study, don't forget the title of the work focuses on contrasting Nigerian communities. So in selecting a really contrasting setting in the Nigerian school, we selected Lagos. So Lagos was selected due to its diverse socioeconomic landscape, which includes affluent urban areas like Victoria Island and urban slums such as Makoko. And Lagos is also the commercial nerve center of Nigeria and the fourth largest economy in Africa. This therefore pushes economic status on climate change vulnerability and adolescent sexual and reproductive health. So that means that for our selection, we stratified Lagos State into two major groups. One is the urban slums, and for the urban slums, we selected Makoko, Bariga, and Ajegule. And for the affluent societies, we selected Victoria Island, Lekki Peninsula, and Ikeja, GRA. This approach for us ensures diversity and ensures that we have a representative sample. So this is a pictorial representation of what we're trying to look at, looking at things from two different settings, affluent communities and the urban slums. The urban slum picture you're seeing here was one of the pictures that I had to during my visit to Makoko for my study. So for the quantitative components, we utilize surveys and administered surveys on 300 adolescents between the age of 15 and 19. Though generally, adolescents fall within the age of 10 to 19, but we tend to focus more on 15 to 19 because we feel that they are more, they seem to be more prepared and more susceptible to engage in sexual activities. And since the work focuses on sexual and reproductive health, we have selected this age bracket. Ethical approval was obtained from the Institute of Public Health, Obafemi Awolowo University, and the participants' consent was well received, and all through the study, confidentiality and protection of participants' identity and data was ensured. So now to the findings. One of the things we found is that the nature of climate effects in our selected community cuts across 5 noticeable impacts. Which are floods and ocean surges, coastal subsidence, heat waves, storms, and coastal erosions were reported in the course of our study. However, those in the urban slums never agreed that climate change was a major issue. So we looked deeper into this assertion and then realized that actually their denial was a product of their ability to live with crisis and perhaps finding ways to adapt to, to the climate change crisis. The picture you're seeing here is a picture of places in Lekki Phase 1 to be precise. And we know, we've seen it in news as well. We hear a whole lot of flooding around, some of these affluent communities, especially along the coastal lines. Again, another of a finding is to say that there seems to be a low level of awareness of the concept and phenomenon and impact of climate change in the underserved areas. If you look at the image we have here, the pictures on the left is there are pictures of one of the schools that we have in Lekki. That's the Lekki British School. And on the right is a school in Makoko. I'll just show just a clip of my visits to Makoko in the course of my work so that we can get a clearer picture of what I've been saying so far. So this is Makoko here now, and you can see their buildings within these communities. As dirty and as messy as it looks, here they have their hospitals, they have their schools, they have virtually everything. They even have hotels where you can lodge when you come for visits and all of that. And this again is an example of the school that I was trying to show. This is the picture of the school that I just showed. This is a school in Makoko. And so when you look at all of these settings, you realize that there is in the underserved community, there are limitations in the infrastructure and resources available. So perhaps that has also contributed to the kind of education that they've been able to get, which could have extended into issues of climate change. Another is the variability in health service access. Access to sexual reproductive health services is significantly better in affluent communities compared to what we saw in the slums. In most of the affluent communities, their hospitals provide an array of sexual reproductive health services to their adolescents, ranging from counseling and consultation about contraception methods, birth control pills, condom use, and all of that. They also offer vaccinations, which include vaccination against human papilloma virus, which can cause cervical cancer and other cancer and hepatitis B and all of that. And also STD and STI testings are well available in some of these affluent health facilities. This is a sample picture of what you have as an health facility in the affluent communities. And this is a primary healthcare center in Makoko. And when I interacted with them, I realized that the major medical issues they attend to are largely malaria cases. So to even talk of ANC, child delivery, postnatal care, and other sexual reproductive health services are visibly not even available in some of these health facilities in the urban slums. Then again, we also, Dr. Ogo, how many minutes more do I have?
3 minutes now. You had 5 minutes earlier, but I have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, good. So the other findings is the fact that there's significant gender disparity in climate vulnerability in the different settings, especially in the urban slums, where I realize that due to pre-existing socioeconomic challenges and cultural norms, wherever there is an emergency, the girl child is more susceptible to the impact of these emergencies. And then barriers exacerbated by socioeconomic factors. The prevailing socioeconomic factors and pre-existing inequality also further worsen the challenges of accessing health services during climate emergencies, just as I have shown with some of the images. Now, what are the policy implications? There's need to enhance education around climate change and sexual reproductive health for empowering adolescents and mitigating adverse impacts. This study therefore calls for a focus on educational initiatives to equip adolescents with knowledge to better cope with climate-related challenges. This study also emphasizes the need for inclusive approaches, gender-inclusive, gender-responsive, interventions. And these are part of the things that this study tries to emphasize. In conclusion, the study highlights the urgent need for gender-responsive policies to address the disproportionate impact of climate change on adolescent sexual and reproductive health in Nigeria. This underscores the importance of enhancing education, improving health service accessibility, and empowering individuals to foster resilience in vulnerable community. As a call for action, I would say that policymakers, educators, and community leaders must collaborate to create inclusive strategies that prioritize the health and well-being of adolescents, ensuring climate justice and equitable health outcomes for all. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I must say that there are a lot of issues to unpack in your presentation, and I'm sure that during the course of this panel, we will talk about them. But one of the things I find striking about your presentation is how we can link it to Joel Abba's, I think it was a presentation earlier this morning. Joel worked on the effects of COVID or the impacts of COVID on women's reproductive health at selected IDP camps in Benue State. And of course, we're able to see, or he was able to outline how the pandemic affected women's access to reproductive health, which is similar to the adolescents in Makoko and their access to reproductive health. But I have a question that you could think about before you will have time to address the question. Not in your title, you said you're working with adolescents, right? So did you speak with them or you spoke with their parents? And if you spoke with them, did you get parental consent? And how eager were they to share their ideas with you? You can think about that for the time being. So now we'll listen to the last speaker in the person of Dr. Abiodun Olofishawo. Minister Abiodun Olofishawo, PhD, is a scholar and lecturer at Elizabeth University, Laramoki, Nigeria. His area of research are African literature, comparative literature, and gender studies. He is published in both local and international journals. Dr. Olofishawo will be speaking on the title Gender Revolutionary Aesthetics and Culture in Bayo Adebowale's The Virgin and Tunde Kelani's The Narrow Path, a comparison. You have the floor for 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I say I'm Minister Abiodun Olofishawo from Elizabeth University. On the term Gender Revolutionary Aesthetics and Culture in Bayo Adebowale The Virgin and Tunde Kelani's movie titled The Narrow Path. I'll be looking at this paper from the literary perspective of literature. And knowing that we have so many studies, so many researches carried out on feminism, feminine condition, sexuality, from different perspectives, from womanhood, motherhood, parenting, and so many aspects. But actually, the aspect we're focusing here is to look at other aspects of revolution that are going to bring some changes into so-called norms, cultures that have been entrenched in our society, and some of these cultures, some of all these beliefs are actually inimical and dangerous to a particular set of people in the society, especially the female gender. And so we will continue to practice all these cultures and beliefs, or there's need for revolution, need for change. And actually, and that's what we are looking at this happening, that women actually, to make that there's need for them to come together and bring form of revolution, change to all those patriarchal domination and oppression that women genders have suffered for so long. And so the need for revolution is important even at this one. And this kind of revolution is going to change, going to broaden our horizon and bring changes to our system, to some cultural practices that will establish some representations and even some institutions that we have on ground. And so there's need for all kind of movements, and that's why we're looking at all these aspects of, safe sexual agencies, reproductive health in our system, and different movements that we have. And so when we talk of revolution, definitely revolution drives a progressive society. Anything that I want to progress, there must be a change. I know naturally, human beings, we fight change, and change is constant. And so if you cannot accept and look at a lot of change, then we're not ready to progress. And so if you have to hold on to this is a practice and this is what it has been done and it must remain like that, then we are not moving forward. And so as I said, we are looking at this study from the literary perspective, looking at two and one movie by Tunde Kelani, that's another part, and book by Bayo titled The Virgin. From the onset, from the beginning of that The Virgin, we see the way the author actually describe and portray a woman that is represented by a character named Awero. And Awero is seen as a character that is disturbed, worried, and who could not sleep. And you ask, what's the cause of the worry? If not a pot have been broken, who did that? A man. And the man is not seen as somebody who has committed a crime. And so the author starts by giving that kind of picture of a woman who is secret and worried. And then he describes the main factor as somebody who is brave, strong. In fact, he did a kind of a metaphor like he's an hunter, and hunter hunts animal. And so the female gender are seen as animals hunted by the hunters, the men. Not just hunting them or hunting them as well. Inflicting pains and wounds both in the mind and in the body, and nothing is actually about that. And that's why one of the main characters there called Dauda. So he said, look, what is it down? What is woman? He said, whenever you see a lady, just tell her, babe, you want to play love? Let us play love. And that is it, and you have them. So believe that, oh, that's strategy. You can have women at any time. In fact, he says that women, ladies are the people that can be deceived by Saturday night powder and Saturday night perfume. When you give them gifts, or you show them kind of little of, oh, then they are gone. Then look at that, it's that kind of, it's like a true picture of gender in a society. And so that's exactly what was trying to address here. Not only that, also, the author, he said for that, he said, women, by the he said, men give all kind of decree and instruct the women. I quote, he said, her husband will issue out all these instructions, and she had to obey. The husband used to be the Lord and master of the matrimonial home, the absolute controller, the chief commander, the iron in the family, who took major decisions, imposing his will. He threw his weight, all knowing, all seeing. That's page 8 from the beginning. And so look at the distribution of the man and that place. And without itself, and the wife is expected by the society to sheepishly obey all those instructions, not minding our emotions, not minding our feelings, not taking it to complete that. And that takes us to kind of gender and cultural revolution. And I said, this lady, Awero, stop. What? Why? Because our pulse has been broken. You know, and that's the point of pulse is broken, talk of loss of virginity. Oh, she has been defied, has been lost. And so the author say, in the case of loss of virginity, it was the woman who used to carry all the blame, all the shame, and all the sorrow and humiliation, no matter whether she was pushed into the act by the man, tricked or forced or overpowered by him. No one ever stopped to ask how it all happened, where, or who the man was, who did it. All that the people wanted to know on the wedding day was whether the woman's fault was intact or had been broken. That's the societal concern. Whether the fault is intact, whether she's a virgin or not. What made her to lose the virginity is not a problem. Who caused that? It takes you to time for God's sake. Why should the man pay all the blame and the shame? And so, yeah, that's why the doubter who commits that crime will easily escape. And said, no, also after that, has finished the school declaration, he escaped to the city and is gone. And Awero continues to bear the brunt. And so Awero said, after this, our wedding was approaching. And so on the wedding day, one arrives. And she look at the celebration and the joy and the mood, everything. She's carried along with the money of hope. When I get my husband has come to me, he will listen to me, he will love me, he will care for me. And so I'm going to do what? Explain and open my mind to him, and he's going to understand me. Self-delusion. Thinking the man is going to accept her. And probably, and that takes us to the issue of sexual agency. When you talk of sexual agency, we're talking about the ability of one to do what? To identify, to communicate, and to negotiate sexual needs. Not only negotiate that, to initiate some behavioral character that will help, for sexual fulfillment. Because sexual fulfillment is on both sides. It's not just for man, it's also for the woman. Yeah, and so, in our society, we'll be like, oh, even if a woman tries to initiate to communicate with us, so maybe that woman is actually an harlot, and she's loose. Yes, and that's why some women, they don't actually enjoy, enjoy that. Not because of the sexual agency that you surround that, it's not there. And which actually goes to what's called the reproductive health. And so when we talk of that, there's need for both sides to kind of communicate and understand. And so yes, the wedding night finally arrives for Awero, believing that everything will be okay. So in the room, she tries to sort of communicate her feelings, believing that when we talk of sexual development, it's not only the penetration that matters, even the foreplay, even the understanding, even the communication that should aid that that kind of union. And so by the time she's sleeping in the room, looking at her husband, the husband says the husband comes in her
Ordaining continent and assume the ferocity of a tiger, ready to devour, not ready to listen again. And so I said, tired. He said, look, my dear, I'm tired. I'm not ready for this, for sexual this night. Let us stop. Emotionally, look, I'm not ready emotionally for sexual relation this night. Let us discuss as new husband, as new couple. But the husband is not ready. Look, for me, I'm not tired. Yes, I'm not tired. Don't stop complaining. I said, look, people are waiting outside for us. People are waiting, and you are waiting. Let them wait. This is between us, our hope, our life. But thank you. So at the end of the day, we see that despite the complaint and try to prioritize the urban refuses, at the end, the urban forces himself on her and get his greatest job of his life. The fault that he broke. The wife is no more a virgin, and kata problem starts immediately. And so I will try to plead with him. No, he won't listen. And openly he embarrasses the woman, calling her a broken pot, and what is happening? Tension, killing, destruction of properties, start in the two communities. And that take us to the level of what God is also abuse the humanitarian. That who actually defied man is gone. And we say, that rape, you use the word rape now, maybe, but even what the husband does, what rape. But no one talk rape because spousal abuse. So spousal abuse to me is when you accidentally with somebody, whether it's a legal husband or legal wife or illegal husband. As long as you are doing that without the consent of the partner, then that is rape, that is abuse, sexual abuse. In recently, one of all these Nigerian like Japa, the UK, the case already online, saw about that. Oh, after I've gone to work and this and that, expect the wife go to them, no, let's not get together. Oh, I expect the wife to understand. Let me have sex with you. You must say, no, I've gone since morning, I'm tired, let me rest. No. But once the old understand, no, I'm an African man, I'm a Nigerian from East, and so I must have sex with you. The woman said no. And so what happened? He sued the husband to court because he's in the court at the moment. And he's in the court. Yes, but so that takes us to the level. Look, the African mentality. Most foreign nations, they haven't done that. But legalizing marital abuse. But in Nigeria, we are yet to get to that stage. And so we must understand that need for us to not come to that. After pleading and that this sexual abuse need to be legalized and that we need for revolution. And so for the case of Awelo, she made a revolutionary speech. And after discovering the trouble in the land, she had to call all that female characters together that look, this is where we found ourselves, there's need for revolution, there's need for change. No man will be for us, we must be by ourselves. And so she called other female characters and they come together. The men were ready to fight and she made a speech to them and said, look, we must fight for ourselves. And so that is me. Women also must come together and fight for ourselves. Issue of sexual agency has to be brought to the need in the world and make sure that it is entrenched even in a system. For us to have a reproductive system, we must have a safe sexual agency. Which has to do with communication and understanding between the two partners, whether legally married or illegally married. The more we understanding, that's what will lead to safe sexual agency, where we can communicate that sexual desire and make sure that every one of us is kind of, because sexual enjoyment is meant for both parties. So the other, I don't enjoy sex. No, that shouldn't be there. It should be there. But what we want that is what is communication. It's coming together. It's fighting for us. So in conclusion, you can use something that's sexual agency is the key to cultural liberation. The affect for mentality that the identification and communication of sexual needs should come from a particular tribe. Because every one of us can communicate it, can initiate it, whether it's the wife or the husband, you can initiate and make sure you enjoy it to the fullest, as the man has given you the opportunity to do that. And so, African women or reproductive age will continue to suffer if we fail to initiate that in our constitution. If we fail to implement that in our system, we continue to suffer. And so, there's also rights like Awelo and other women and fight for rights. At this time, when we still have the grace to do that. So, feminism must move forward, and the culprits, whether it's Dauda, whether it's Ordaining the husband, those people will be brought to book. Thank you for listening. I can picture actually here that shows some picture there from the movie. That is when our Lord fought is what they broke and his goods have been returned back to the father's land to our home and on and on. And that is when the man is actually trying to, sexual agency, try to entice and seduce the lady. And that's what we have there. But actually, it is a man's open embarrassment from the husband to our and one of that. And then we say our Lord, they come together to fight for the battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Official. I think after having listened to all the presentations today, several issues are arisen, right? And I'm sure you all have your questions. You can start students get that. I'm sorry I have to be selfish. I have to ask some of my own questions there too. But before that, I'd just like to give a recap and try to look for the connections within all the presentation, right? So from the first presentation to the last, what I find very striking is the outcome of sexual agency. Now, men have sexual agency, women have sexual agency, but most often than not, women are led to bear the outcome of the sexual agency. So it appears that, or it seems like women's exercise of their sexual agency leaves them vulnerable. So vulnerable that they are led to live with whatever comes out of the exercise of their sexual agency. So in Stephanie's research, for instance, we're able to see how women try to exercise their sexual agency by seeking out forms of obtaining pleasure during the act of sex, and also looking out for ways of taking care of maybe the outcome or the negative or unexpected outcome of their exercise of their sexual agency. In Fire's work too, that thing also resonates. Like women exercise their sexual agency within their marriage or within their spousal relationship. But when it comes to childcare, which in our work is not a bad thing, like every married woman wants to have a child, right? But there's a life after pregnancy and there's a life outside childcare, which the woman is left to some extent to take care of herself. So the outsourcing of childcare while she has to work or develop her career or expand her business is left in her care, which also raises the question of the presence of the male partner. Okay, and I understand that a number of men in the room will say men do contribute to childcare and the rest of all that, but to a large extent, women are still left. Women do a lot of this, which a lot of childcare and domesticity, which tells on their personal career and business development. And in Kingsley's work, so we're also able to see how policies put in place can actually curb the problem or maybe unsafe sexual practices, which will in the long run contribute positively to young women's and in fact even young persons generally contribute positively to their reproductive health care. And finally, in Dr. Lofishal's research, we are also able to see how women exercise of their sexual agency, okay, leaves them vulnerable and they are left to live with the outcome of it. I think I've asked all the questions I want to ask. So the floor is open for questions and answers. May I please ask that while you're asking your question, you make it very brief so that we can have room to pick up as many questions as possible. So if you have questions, you can signify. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 4. All right. So Samuel, you have a question.
Thank you so much. I want to appreciate all the presenters. Very briefly, I have just one question. I think a concern and a comment to the first and the third presenters. The first presenter, that's talking about. I love the research finding to be when you were able to tell us about misinformation and fake news. However, in the research finding 1, 2, in response to 1 and 2, I think there's also a place where we can look at, especially when it comes to methodology. going down to the comment section of those social media, and then now you are able to see. And for instance, in one, I think it's chapter in the 2, we talked about getting health advices. Now, sometimes there was a time everybody was using red oil to rub their body because of something, and it was on social media, from WhatsApp and everything. Then again, I also understand too that sometimes when you're talking to your personal doctor, you can use WhatsApp, which is also social media. Yes. So there's also a thin line between that. So we can't throw everything away and not be able to absorb everything. So your methodology, how are you able to see which one should we go for original newspaper, that one is fake, Then the third presenter, I just that's really Kingsley. So I just have this concern when you use the word urban slum, and then you now say urban slums, you don't have access to sexual and reproductive health. Like that. I think I read that. And I've not been to Makoko, so I can't talk much about. I can't talk much about Makoko. But I grew up in Mushin, that is especially the urban slum aspect of Mushin. Sometimes we have NGOs who come around and share condoms, share sanitary pads. They do vaccination, even without collecting money from people around. And then you discover that in some urban, sophisticated area, these things are expensive. These things are not really accessible like that. And since anybody can claim to stay in Lagos, and I love the part of urban, you actually see that it's different urban and urban slum. But I think that information can be explained better or conceptualized better, because in most of us that I've seen, because I'm also working on urban, I discovered that they have access to information and at a cheaper rate compared to the urban substituted SCC.
Okay. So thank you. Then Samuel has just some of the data. Not the point you can really want about not. I think the presenter generalized so much. And then on Marco, then I think most of what he said are not facts, because I'm a community development worker, and I know how much work goes into Marco. And then there was also a statement, or a sentence I read in the presentation that said that vaccinations like HPV, like for polio, no, not polio, but he mentioned 3 vaccines, and I want to tell you that those vaccines are paid for, even in the affluent hospitals, private, you have to pay for it, hepatitis B and all that. So they are not free. But in fact, at those local places, those slums, you can have them at cheaper rates because NGOs subsidize all these things. So the generalization is too much. And Makoko is not just that lagoon first. Makoko is big enough. We have schools, we have schools. I was showing him a picture of the general school today, and there is this here. I was actually teaching when I went there. So we should try as much as possible to not generalize. And if we are zooming in on the location, we should take where exactly we are talking about, not just general name.
Okay, let's. Okay,
I
didn't listen to Stephanie's presentation right. Well, my question is the last speaker, and first one is on positionality, because oftentimes when you're doing research, you wouldn't have a position as a researcher, right? Even though you try to be objective about it. Now on the issue, because there was this fixation with the woman talking to the woman. Are we saying that the men do not experience the same thing that we talk about women? And secondly, when you talk about marital rape, do you subscribe to the idea of marital rape? Do you think that people who are legally married can actually rape themselves? That's my question.
I think that's the name is
Please, can you stand so they can see you? Can you stand, please, so the camera can see you?
All right. So for you, sir, first of all, yes, I have to double check when narrow path was filmed, when it was released by MTV, that so 2016. So it appears that you used a movie of 2006 to arrive at current, like present day conclusions. And at first, when I saw revolutionary, a word like that in your presentation, I thought we were going to talk about the revolutions that may have happened in society, since the release of the narrow path in 2006. So this is 18 years later. That's why I'm asking you that question. For Kingsley, for Kingsley. So I subscribe to this generalization thing, but another angle for you. I can't remember exactly what your topic is. Program schools here, but it appears that what you mean by sexual and reproductive health measures is quite fuzzy. It's not clear. So what is it about sexual and reproductive health? Because like you mentioned, it's a very wide aspect. What were you asking them? I just reiterate what the chair has asked, because I really would like to touch on it. It's an sitting concept, and the ethics of engaging with such a, like we have established in such a sensitive and protected topic amongst children in urban slums. And how was that compared to children in the, what's the other area you called it?
Urban affluent.
Yeah, urban affluent. How was that? Can you give us a bit of a comparison of this? Lastly, Stephanie, I'm not sure who is Stephanie. Oh, Sophia. Okay, Sophia. Yeah, you look like Stephanie. I meant Sophia. Okay. So, for Sophia, I'm concerned about the part of Omugwo in your work, and I have seen articles about grandmothering. When we talk about Omugwo, it relates mainly to grandmothers, or whether your in-laws or your actual mother as a woman. So, but there has also been, from those studies, I have seen that the concept of grandmothering is changing. In the olden days, grandmothers are people that, or let me not say the olden days, in the recent past, right? Grandmothers are people that can leave their work and come and stay with you when you give birth as a woman. But in recent times, grandmothers are people with businesses, grandmothers who are professionals, grandmothers are, they have what to do with their lives. So instead of them to stay forever like before, they're the ones that will tell you I'm going back to my husband's house. So I just want to see how that modern or evolving concept of grandmothering in how it interfaces with your work on the work.
All right, let's move on. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So I just want to give a general comment, or I narrow down to what I would say based on what the last speaker said. I think you forgot to mention the issue of victim blaming. It should also be addressed in society. Should be addressed in society. And then particularly also, I think you hit a particular thing about that thing, the issue of rape. Because that's something about first our buildings before or judging. The reason I say this categorically is because when I was in part one, we acted and I was here aware. So blaming particularly should be hammered at generally, not about sex now. In the society, in our context now, when the ladies, for instance, spirits, we tend to blame her. Yeah. Or people, parents, tend to blame her. And then they will tell you, you weren't properly dressed. You weren't properly dressed. Why did you go there? If you were to read the equivalent sentences, they would blame the victim generally. Yeah. Oh, they will tell you, you still might think somebody will tell you, why did you keep it there? Okay, so please, like, we should please let's hammer on that place. That's very important. It's very, very particular thing.
All right, I think that's all right. So we have about 2 minutes left. So I think we should give each of the presenters 3 minutes to talk 3 minutes. Maybe that's also, but yeah, 3 minutes to address this question. So should we start? Let's start with the other equity presenters. So that means Stephanie, I'm going for
Okay, yeah. So Manuel asked a question on how should you see birth? How did I see birth? Okay, basically, when I did my study, I looked at each of the posts. I tried to look at the comments, which was why in my third finding, I said issues around misinformation and fake news, because as women, most times, especially in a world wherein it's difficult for you to get information from the physical spaces, so to take everything we see online, like we should not rely on this fully, because in each of every post, there are some persons that just come online to post because they need engagement. And there are some information you see online that they are not true. I know many people that are falling victim to Kayamata, use this, use that, your sexual urge with they have cervical cancer. So for every information you see, try and ensure that you double check. So I try to look at the post and the post, the trend, the percentage, and how reliable some of these platforms are, which was why I narrowed my focus to platforms like Wives and Mothers, because I try and look at some of the advice they give in that platform is better than some advice in some other platforms. So there are some platforms that are, even though they are not 100% reliable to some extent, they still provide advice that are good to women. Thank you.
okay. Yes, okay. Can address.
Yeah, thank you for the question about the grandmothers. I find it very interesting because it shows how you can how the changing gender roles also involves different generations. So when you look at the grandmothers now, you can see patterns with fertility rates and family size, but also how their changed roles have an impact on care arrangements today. So I think I mentioned briefly with the Umugu. So it's just another factor for childcare arrangements today, and I would like to look further into the solutions that come with that. And then also about Dr. Uga, your question about the role of male partners. So almost all women, no, almost all mothers in my research were married. Single mothers are another topic to talk about, I would say. I talked to some of the male partners, but of course not as in-depth as with the women. Most of them didn't have issues with their wives using having something around 3 children, and then financially, which is also a pressure and a burden on men. So I would be interested to learn more about that, of course. And I think in general, the work and family structures in Lagos would not allow fathers to get more involved. I think the compatibility of childcare and work for men is another completely different topic that never came up during my field work. And when I attended antenatal classes in Unilag and also in Lekki, I rarely saw any fathers there. And I think it's because leaving work to accompany pregnant partners is not possible for most men in Lagos. Most have jobs that would not allow them to leave. So yes, the question of fathers and masculinity in parenthood is also very interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Kingsley, your turn.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Uga. And I most especially appreciate everybody that have found a way to make comments on my work. Yes, they are as expected, and I really appreciate you for those comments. So first, let me start with the issue of ethical consideration. As I stated earlier, I obtained ethical clearance from the Institute of Public Health Care, and considering my age bracket, the age bracket for the study, 15 to 19. So those below the 18 that is 15, 16, 17, 18, I obtained parental consent from their parents. For those 18 up, 18, 19, there wasn't need for that. All I got was just their consent and the research was conducted. And so for those that I obtained parental consent from their parents, interviews were still conducted with them away from their parents. So as just to provide that conducive environment for them to perhaps share their experiences and talk about some of these issues. Now, on the comments on the fact that NGOs to the urban slums to donate, all of that. Now, that can't be argued because these communities, I mean the urban slums, are underserved communities. And it is because of even the identified limited resources and infrastructure that propels this NGO to most times come in for intervention. But what we are more concerned about is about institutionalizing these facilities, the educational facilities, the healthcare facilities, having them well in place in these societies. It's just like a child that, has the foodstuff compared to a child that needs to wait for somebody to come and, give it food. Having that empowerment, having the societies well empowered, that is what we are trying to look at in relations to the urban slums and the affluent communities. You can see in the pictures that I showed, these schools, these hospitals, obviously, for obvious reasons, would lack those requisite resources. So we're looking at situations whereby these resources can be made available in these places. And on the issue of generalizing Makoko, this and that. Now, the point is this, even when we talk about Makoko, even if you go on the internet and you type Makoko, what comes up is still the coastline areas. And I was at the coastline area of Makoko and the dry land. But the point is that when you still talk of, for instance, a place like Makoko, what comes to mind immediately? As a matter of fact, Makoko is being regarded as as Africa's largest floating slum. So it's like there's a general consensus of Makoko when you talk about it. The core of it is on the coastline. For instance, again, in my work, I mentioned Ajegunle. Ajegunle was part of my study. But in reality, when you get to Ajegunle today, good part of Ajegunle has been fully urbanized. Good roads, good water, good light, good everything. But yet, it doesn't undermine the reality that there are still slums.
I guess they should specify it more different.
So maybe in the bulk of the work, maybe because this is just a PowerPoint, all of this cannot just be thrown into it. For instance, in Ajegunle, where I even visited, includes places like Tolu. For somebody that is very conversant with Ajegunle, Tolu is still an urban slum in Ajegunle, where you have larger part of Ajegunle now well developed. So let me just leave that on that. Now, I think somebody also asked a question on what exactly do I mean or refer to in terms of sexual reproductive health. At the level of this work, our focus was on access to sexual reproductive health services, at least at this level. We've not been able to strongly establish issues of sexual reproductive health attitude and behavior as it directly relates to climate change. But what we've been able to identify are around issues of sexual and reproductive health access and how this access could be disrupted by climate change emergencies. So I wouldn't know if there are other things, but for now, I just hope that I've done justice to some of the questions raised. And if I've missed any, my sincere apologies.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Quickly address some of the concerns there. Well, I agree with you. Actually, the narrow path came many years ago. But actually what I want to bring out in that place, actually, if you look at the title, is a comparison. The Virgin is the literary text. The narrow part is a movie. And the conclusion is actually what I try to bring up because of want of time. If you look at the Virgin, the text itself, everything ends in killing, destruction. But in the narrow part, with that way we see the revolution. The woman, they're coming up to fight for themselves. So in narrow part, it ends happily with the female gender winning the war, bringing peace to the land. Whereas in the other one, we see the women, in that same pain and see the whole thing being destroyed and not kind of. So that is the aspect I'm trying to look at there. And if you get the full if you have the time, the issue of rape. Actually, yes, I agree with. It's not of rape. That rape they get there, actually, and that's the first rape before the husband also, and which can lead us to the question of a scholar there. Yeah, the talk of marital race and the family. And in fact, actually, that one of the books I read about 2018, but it titled it, "Excuse me, but are you raping me now?" Referring to her husband. It's kind of, are you raping me now? And actually, the reason I tried to refer to the other women organization actually informed this study, which I got to know this fellow. Both of them moving to UK. Get now, I'm getting there. Look, he said compulsively, I must have sex with you anytime I want. The wife said, no, you can't have it anytime you want. And so to what I know the couple, and he said the case she reported in the court is that my husband raped me. Actually, I wanted to title this paper, "My Husband Raped Me." Get now. And so at times in such situation when you don't have the consent of your partner, whether it's legally married or not, actually somehow we could actually tie that as spousal abuse. And so of taking position, actually, well, I understand. I'm just looking at it from the literary perspective. And so woman taking woman body and the rest. And so actually we just to focus on women and what would have been passing through in the society and how they can come together and revolutionize and change the decision in order to create a better sexual agency and reproductive health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think all the panel sessions have addressed the questions I raised in the call for this panel. And I think the outcome of most of the papers presented so far have shown that when it comes to issues of sexual agency and reproductive health, women are the most vulnerable, right? So that brings us to the question I would like us to take home and ponder on. So if women are vulnerable in the exercise of their sexual, in their reproductive, in their sexual agency, right? And then when it comes to reproductive health issues, women also bear the brunt of maybe government failures or lack of policies and the rest of all that. Who then should take contraceptive? Who should? No, it's a question that we can all ponder on. Like, who should be made to wear the condom? And what is the future of women's reproductive health based on what obtains in our society today? We still have 2 minutes left, actually. So we could talk on that, or we could talk about it outside the space. But I really appreciate everyone that has attended this panel, this panel and the first part in the morning. Thank you very much for being a part of this. I'm grateful.
Thank you very much for having us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, my day is over.
I don't know you have tomorrow.
For that, tomorrow, one panel and one presentation. Stephanie, thank you. I like the way your research kind of intersects with mine. Do a part of maybe your first objective. Like me, I look at sexual pleasures.
Okay.
And how women seek for sexual pleasure.
I did a paper on that. Although I tried publishing, I'm supposed to publish it, but I'm so lazy.